Hello, everyone. So if you have ever been awake at 2 a.m. and happened to Google how to fall asleep at 2 a.m, come across sleep research information or checked out sleep aids, you've probably come across something either written by my next guest or some product that he consulted on. Dr. Michael Breus is a clinical sleep psychologist. He is one of the foremost sleep experts in the country. He's a regular in helping people, celebrities, athletes, his patients in private practice, and you've seen him everywhere from Oprah to the Today Show. He's also a really good friend and just a personal sleep guru for me as well. So Michael, welcome. I'm so excited to have you.
Thanks, Darria. It's my thrill to be here and to be able to have the opportunity to address so many people that I know come to you for important information, especially during a time like now. So it's my honor to be here. So thank you so much.
How did you get into sleep in the first place?
As you know, I'm a PhD clinical psychologist, and I was finishing my graduate degree at the University of Georgia, which is where I'm from. Top 20 program in clinical psychology, so it was a great place to be. And initially, I was actually interested in sport psychology. So I wanted to work with athletes and get the mental game going and make them throw faster and image things and all this great stuff. So I was also interested in the clinical side of things, and I was interested in eating disorders. And there was one internship. So when you graduate from getting your PhD, you have to do a residency or internship for a year. And there was one, it was at the University of Mississippi Medical Center in Jackson, Mississippi, of all places. And it was like the #1 sports psychology and eating disorders program in the world, right? And I was like, that's where I want to go. In Mississippi, of all places, right? But I couldn't get in. But they had a sleep track that was on the side that they were offering to people. And what that meant was you could do a specialization in sleep and sleep disorders. So it turned out that I had worked my way through graduate school in the electrophysiology department. So I'm the geeky guy that loves to take machines apart and put them back together and figure out how they work. And I knew how to use every one of the sleep machines that they used to collect the data. So here was my thought. I said to myself, I'm going to sell myself as a sleep guy, but I'm not going to really do it. And as soon as I get accepted to the program, I'm going to transfer.
It's a bait and switch there. Classic bait and switch.
Just because you don't think I'm qualified to be in your program does not mean that I will not make it into your program and prove you wrong, right? And so I was like, I'm gunning for it. So I got accepted. I got to the program and they're like, okay, you're going to start in the sleep rotation. I was like, no problem. By the third day, I absolutely fell in love with clinical sleep medicine. I knew I was never going to practice anywhere else.
I just have to ask you, okay, so give everybody one tip, just a little aside. What's one tip that can make everybody sleep better tonight?
Wake up at the same time every day, including the weekends.
Question on that, because I get asked by parents this a lot, and myself included, but they say, I have to get up at 5:30 during the week to be able to work out before the kids and carpool and everything else. You're telling everybody they got to get up at 5 on a Saturday and Sunday, Michael?
That's exactly what I'm telling you, and I'll tell you why. And what I would say is within 30 minutes, right? Like I'll give you the 30-minute window. So if you wake up at 5:30, I want you up at 6. And I'll tell you, there's a couple of reasons why. So number one, if you work out that early, you should be working out that early on Saturday as well, right? Circadian consistency. Many people don't know this, but it's not just light that affects your circadian cycle, but exercise does as well. What time of day you exercise can give you energy or take away energy from you. So if you still wake up, do you want to sleep in for 30 minutes? Go for it. But after that, use that time in the morning for time for self-care. That's what I'm telling a lot of my patients to do. Because you know what? The people who do wake up at 5:30, they usually aren't taking good care of themselves, unfortunately. They take care of everybody else in the family, everybody else in the company, but they don't always take care of themselves. And so use that time for you, whether that's reading up on something new that you're interested in, just spending the Saturday morning reading the paper and having a cup of coffee and having some quiet time. I think it's super duper valuable. But yes, wake up at the same time every day, no matter what.
How long do you have to get through for all of our listeners who are saying that sounds pretty awful on a Saturday? How many Saturdays until you make that habit?
3.
Okay.
It takes 21 days basically to reset your circadian cycle. So you're talking about 3 weekends. Within 3 weekends, your body will be attuned to it. And if it's hard for you, then maybe you have an accountability buddy. Maybe that's the Saturday that you can go for a run with your friend who's also trying to do the same thing, and you do it together.
Yeah,
right?
That's
There's
good.
Lots of creative ways to do it.
Yes, and I want to also take this moment to plug your book, The Power of When. And of course, it's not in your cool screen grab behind you. But again, I know,
I need a push back there.
and that's another time. We could get into all the different chronotypes, but I think if you're curious, if you're a morning person or a nighttime person, check out The Power of When, learn about your different chronotypes. Michael, just tell people what the 4 titles of the chronotypes are.
Yeah, so chronotype, for people, you might not have heard the term, but you've actually heard of the concept before. So what we're talking about here is early bird versus night owls, right? So it turns out that there aren't just early birds and night owls. There's people in between, and there's people with insomnia. So I actually I changed all the names because I'm not a bird, I'm a mammal, right? And so I actually chose animals that people would want to be. Like, nobody wanted to be a porcupine, just to be clear, so we couldn't choose that one.
No fun.
So we chose lions, represent early birds, bears represent people in the middle, wolves are night owls, and then dolphins are my people who have difficulty sleeping or insomnia. And so it turns out that each one of those animals actually follows that circadian rhythm. So wolves are more night creatures, lions are more early morning. Dolphins, people always ask me about, this is kind of a fun fact, is dolphins sleep unihemispherically. So half of their brain is asleep while the other half is awake and looking for predators. And I felt like that represented my insomnia patients. Never quite asleep, right? And those are my problem children. And we focus a lot of those on them in the book.
I like that you refer to your patients as your children. That's very nice. Yes. It's a nice feeling. As you've gone through the years, was there either a moment that was kind of your lowest, maybe your hardest, your biggest challenge in that career?
So there has been. And so I've taken a kind of an interesting route in my career. So many sleep doctors, as it were, are MDs, not PhDs. Let's start there. And they're treating apnea and narcolepsy and restless legs and insomnia and things like that, which I've always worked within physician office settings. So I work in conjunction with doctors in the office. And so we're tag teaming patients most of the time. But I started to understand that there aren't just sleep disorders in the world. There's what I call disordered sleep, right? And so it's not, you don't quite meet that criteria for apnea, but you snore a lot and you wake up and you feel like crap. What do you do? And so I've really focused a lot of my efforts in that area. And that's where the books come from, my lecturing comes from, and things like that. So this is a long-winded way of telling you the most difficult lecture that I ever gave.
What was it?
So I was asked to speak on Skid Row to 20 homeless children and teach them how to sleep.
Wow.
It was the most difficult thing I've ever done in my career. It was, I mean, I'm getting emotional just thinking about it. Like, it was like nothing like I had ever experienced before. When you've got 20 kids who really want to learn this, and one of the questions was, how do you sleep through gunshots? Serious question. How do you sleep through gunshots? Like, that was tough, right? Because they're completely unresourced. You can't say to them, go buy a new pillow, get a new mattress, right? They're sleeping literally on the street. So that was arguably one of the most challenging and rewarding times that I've ever really had in doing what I do. I'll also tell you that right now I feel very purposeful now in giving people this information, especially during quarantine and times like that. So I think that's been difficult, but important work that I've been able to do. I think that's been really interesting and hard. But with all of those levels of difficulty, it comes so many levels of learning and understanding and progress that I can then share with my other patients.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to go back to that Skid Row story. Was there?
Yep.
I don't know, the question can be twofold. What was the one thing you could give them for guidance, or what was one thing you learned from them to help them or to carry on up towards other patients?
So I actually learned the same thing in both directions, and it's mindset, right? They have no resources. Literally, the only thing they have is their brain. And so the talk was really centered around, how do you think about sleep? How do you think positively about sleep? And what is your intent for sleep? And then I've carried that message to my insomnia patients now. So it's very fascinating. So when people wake up in the middle of the night and they look at the clock, the first thing they say is, oh crap, right? I've only got 3 hours left.
You do the math.
Sleep, right? You instantly do the mental math and you say, sleep, and you try to sleep. I've always said, sleep is a lot like love. The less you look for it, the more it shows up. So when you're trying to sleep, it's very, very hard.
Sleep and dating advice.
I know, right? Sex, sleep, bed doctor, sleep doctor, who knows, right?
So all of it.
When you start to look at that as a concept, right, of not being negative in the middle of the night, because that's what I learned from these kids is all they have is their attitude. All they have is their ability to be positive. And then I was noticing that many of my patients in the middle of the night get negative. Oh crap, I've only got 3 hours left and they're trying to sleep. So we flip that script and we change it to positivity. And I tell my patients to turn to themselves and say, this is awesome. I've got 2.5 hours left to hopefully get a little bit more sleep. If I have to wake up right now, I know I can function, but I'm going to lie here. I'm going to chill out. I'm going to relax and I'm going to see what happens. Just changing the attitude lowers autonomic arousal, right? So what's the science behind it? When people get pissed off, their heart rate jumps, their blood pressure jumps. You can't actually physically get back into an unconscious state with a heart rate above 60. So I have to teach them techniques to lower that heart rate. The positivity, for lack of a better word, I'm not some woo-woo, guy. I'm a hard science guy.
This is why we love you.
Really,
yes.
Right, it really works. So there's actually a study that I can tell you about that shows that optimism, both before bed and in the middle of the night, actually helps people fall asleep more quickly and have more pleasant dreams, which is kind of cool when you think about it, right?
It is. And I think the most important thing for people to learn, and I mean, your Skid Row story, it really exemplifies that, is we don't have to all be little Pollyanna optimists to be able to fall asleep at night. There are skills we can do to alter our mindset to be a little more positive, optimistic before our head hits a pillow.
Absolutely. And so I think about a lot of things. One of the things I'm telling people now is put yourself on a media diet 90 minutes before bed, right? To be fair, you just don't need to know the crime statistics right before you fall asleep. You just don't, right? There's no piece of information I can think of that you would get right before you fall asleep that's going to be important enough to be watching the news, media, things like that. What can you do? Do yourself a favor. Watch a romantic comedy, right? Watch Seinfeld. Watch an old episode of Friends. Like, give yourself some runway of positive thinking before you become unconscious, because that positivity will lead right into it and just makes your dreams better. Yeah. Right. So again, thinking about things, I've got some clients, here's what they're doing is they break out a photo album each night of a different year from their history. And they look at it together and they bring up all these positive memories right before bed. And they're telling me, they're like, I'm not having, terrible dreams. I'm thinking about some of the best times in my life right now. So, you can change the screen that's going on inside your brain. You just have to influence it on the front end.
I love it. I do a little gratitude journal at night before bed for that exact reason. But
so that's one of my other things that I tell people to do is a gratitude list.
You may have told it to me in the beginning. But I think, and again, your Skid Row story, that's when I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm worried about my sheets being funny. It's perspective. Yeah. All right. So moving from, you've great stories, Michael, which I knew you always do. Now I want to move into what we're talking about now. We're talking about COVID, all the things with lockdown right now. One of the biggest questions is people aren't commuting. They're often not getting up as early as normal, but everyone is so tired. Why are we tired?
Yes. So there's 3 reasons why we're tired. So one of them is right when people started getting quarantined, they went out and they bought as much shelf-stable food as they could find, and it's all packaged crap, okay? It's loaded with sugar, loaded with preservatives, and so one of the reasons that nobody is sleeping well is people are gaining weight.
Yeah, just eating junk, yes.
And they're going from one junk meal to the next junk meal I mean, if you look on Instagram, if I see one more picture of banana bread, lasagna, like all of this stuff, and don't get me wrong, it's not that I don't think some of those things are delicious, because I think that they are, but when you start, I mean, people have been in lockdown for a while, right? And so when you start adding up all of the calories, that becomes a big problem. The second problem is nobody's moving, right? Nobody is moving. I saw a tweet the other day from a celebrity that said, I've taken 200 steps today and it's 2:00. I mean, think about it. Normally, by 2:00, I probably would have taken 6,000 steps, right. And if I'd gone for a run, I'd probably be well past 10, right? And so here's the thing. Exercise is the single best way to improve the quality of your sleep. We're not moving, right? Just the peripheral activity of walking to, from the car to the parking lot,
right?
To the office type of thing. We're not having that level of movement. So we're gaining weight. We're not moving. Those are 2 big factors. And the other one is, this is arguably the most stressful time in almost everybody's life that's alive right now. Right? I mean, if you start to think about it, I've never I mean, I'm 52 years old. I've never been in a situation like this before. The level of confinement causes stress, right? So just the idea that I'm confined to my home. I don't know when it's going to stop. I don't know who of my family and friends that I care about who's going to get sick. I don't know what's going on financially with me or anybody else in the universe or how that's going to affect me. I mean, come on, the stress is tremendous. And I forgot there's a fourth one too that I forgot to add in there, and that's substance abuse. And it's not the substances that you might be thinking of. Caffeine is the biggest problem that we're facing right now. And here's why. People are starting to feel tired. They're starting to feel fatigued because they're overstressed. They're not moving and they're getting fat. So what do? They grab caffeine, right? Because they say to themselves, okay, I'm just going to power through and just drink caffeine all day. Come on, guys. Caffeine has a half-life of between 8 and 10 hours, and that's only for half of it. If you look at total elimination from the body, it can take days for caffeine to get out of your system.
So we need to pause on that. So when you say the half-life of, I want to make sure our audience understands this, the half-life of caffeine, 8 hours, that means that you drink that coffee at 2 p.m. At 10 p.m., 8 hours later, half of it is still in your system.
That's correct.
Be really careful.
Well, what I was going to say is there's two reasons why we don't want to have caffeine going into our systems, especially increased levels of caffeine and later in the day right now. So one of them is, I don't care who you are, even if you can fall asleep after having had 3 cappuccinos, the quality of your sleep is crap. Okay. If I stick electrodes on your head, I'll show it to you. But the other thing is, we are arguably in the most anxious time of most people's lives. Why would you want to add a stimulant to the level of anxiety that everybody is at this point? Like, you really want to level people up?
We don't need it. We don't need it.
We're already neurotic and crazy enough as it is. I don't need to add caffeine to that mixture to make it any worse for me and my family.
True words about all of us. Yes.
Yeah. And the second substance is alcohol.
Yeah.
And here's the issue. Bottom line, alcohol decreases immune function, period. Okay. Like, the science is in on this. Like, this is not a question we're trying to answer any longer. Right. And so here's what people are doing is they're saying, I got this great case of wine or these bottles of wine that I got for gifts from people. We're just going to open up a different bottle every night because we don't have to drive anywhere. So who cares? I care. This is the single worst way to affect your sleep because it affects the physical restoration. It knocks out stage 3, 4 sleep. So you want to know why you're feeling fatigued? I'll tell you exactly why you're feeling fatigued. You're drinking yourself to sleep at night. You're sleeping in because you don't have to commute. And then you're loading up with coffee to try to make it through 12 Zoom calls when your eyes are burning because you've had too much blue light exposure. That's why people are not doing well right now.
And with that beautiful picture of our lives in lockdown, seriously, Michael, you always help put it in perspective. And I would say we're not getting outside. We're not getting the vitamin D. We're not getting the light for our circadian rhythm. Correct. And personally, I also think my routine really matters on those days that maybe I have an early media hit and I don't wake up and I don't go for a run in the morning. My day is off. I'm crankier. I don't eat as well. I'm more tired. So I think that our routines.
Yeah. And that's why when you said to me, what's the one thing that you should be doing? It's starting your day at the same time.
That makes sense.
Kicks through your routine.
It's your one thing.
It literally, because you can't start your routine without waking up. And so that level of consistency, and see what happens is if you sleep in, there's something you're going to have to cut from that routine, and that's going to play havoc on your system. That's why.
Absolutely. That makes sense. Now, continue on this COVID group and the life we're in, are there any particular groups that you see that are more susceptible to sleep challenges right now?
I do. People with depression, absolutely. People with levels of already have levels of mental health and anxiety issues, absolutely. Also, I would argue that loneliness is absolutely kicking into high gear right now. Yeah. Because of the quarantine and the social distancing that's having to occur, people who don't have a bed partner, a housemate, family that lives with them, things like that, are really feeling isolated. And that level of isolation is not good on any level. And so we're really starting to be concerned. We're seeing domestic violence increase. We're seeing suicidality increase. And so again, there's no reason to include things like caffeine and alcohol into the mix. Like, that just makes all of those situations much, much worse.
Right. Takes a tinderbox and makes it more
Yeah,
vulnerable.
exactly. And so for me, I'm always trying to find unique ways and populations that I think may have issues, and then being able to give them, advice. And so for the depressed, for the suicidal, reach out.
Yeah.
Okay. Like everybody's using this phrase, we're all in this together type of thing. We actually are. Right. And so reach out. If you currently if you've gone to therapy, but you can't actually physically see your therapist right now, I bet you can do a Skype session with your therapist. Right. There are all of the hotlines are well manned and womaned now and are available for people. So you can talk with somebody who's a professional who can lead you to the resources that you need. My son works in a community hotline, a health line. And he said, the calls are off the charts right now for people calling in. So, and if you're not experiencing one of these things, but you know somebody who is, you reach out to the person that you think might be hurting, because I'm telling you something, they are, and they'll appreciate.
Yes. People underestimate the value of that. Definitely. When in doubt, if it crosses your mind, if it crosses your mind, just reach out.
Yeah. Even if it's a text message, even if you just send a text to somebody you're thinking about, just like, hey, I was thinking about you today. I mean, look, if you can be purposeful and add a little joy into people's lives who aren't doing so well right now, that seems like a pretty awesome thing to do.
I agree. That gives us all a little purpose. Now, in the last few parts of this interview, I want to switch to our toolkit exercise, because Michael, one of the things I think you're really great at is taking kind of challenges people are facing and saying, okay, here's the actionable things to actually do and start right now, taking it from science to the to-dos. So first scenario we have is for a parent who has a teenager, and you're a parent of teenagers. So this may be from personal advice. But they're missing graduations, they're missing milestones. So you have that teenager who's now upset, and your teen is not sleeping. And as a result, the whole family is not sleeping.
Right.
What are 2 or 3 things they can be doing starting today?
Normally, when I'm talking about teenager sleep, and just to be clear, I have an 18-year-old and a 16-year-old. I've lived this forever. It sucks. Okay. I'm just out there letting you know there's nothing easy about teenage sleep. Okay. That being said, thinking through this as an idea, before something like COVID, I would have different recommendations. I used to tell people that for teenagers, you can let them sleep in on Saturday mornings, but not on Sunday mornings, because that makes it more difficult for them to wake up.
Okay.
So they can catch up on some of that sleep Saturday morning, and they only sleep in for, let's say, an extra hour on Sunday. So that way Monday morning isn't a difficult time to wake them up. Clearly, we don't have that as an issue any longer. I think every school is closed currently. So the secondary issue now is, how do we look at teenagers' sleep schedules during times like COVID? And how do we look at the disappointment that's associated with all of the missed events, and how is that affecting their sleep? So let's take one and then the other. So the first one, what can we have them do? They need to be following a routine and a schedule. Now, to be fair, if they're still in class or about to end class, they need to obviously keep in commensurate with what time they need to be in their class. But the thing that parents need to understand is, what you do not want to do is just let them sleep willy-nilly. Now, if you have a teenager, they're all going to want to stay up later, and they're all going to want to sleep later. So you can still allow them to do some of that, but you need to give them the parameters. So like in our house, we say things like, so my daughter, who's taking classes online from another country, doesn't actually go to school until 4:00 in the afternoon. So with her,
additional challenge.
I know, right? Makes it even more interesting in our house. So what we decided to do is we said, okay, 10:00 in the morning is her wake up time. And so she knows that's the time that she needs to get up, and she gets up on her own, showers, works out, whatever she has to do, then gets herself ready throughout the day to do her things. But keeping on that schedule turns out to be really important. My son, I said to him, I said, okay, well, what do you want to do? And he's done something very interesting that I didn't expect. He wakes up exactly the same time, whether it's during the week or on the weekend, and he takes a shower and he gets dressed. And that's his way of his mindset. That's how he sets his mindset in the morning, to be present, to be able to be, engaging, appropriate, and things like that. So finding these little routines can be very, very helpful. But keeping the routine, whatever it is the most important thing for teenagers. But remember, they're going to want to stay up later, and they're going to want to sleep a little bit later. It's okay to do that, as long as they're not missing assignments and things like that. But 10:00 is probably as late as you really want them to be sleeping.
Okay.
Now we're talking about the disappointment and all the fun stuff.
The emotional weight of it.
So number one, don't ignore it. Talk about it, right? I get it. If you're not used to talking with your kids and you've got a therapist that talks with your kids, use the therapist time with the therapist and talk with your kids. If you don't know how to talk to your kids, learn how to talk to your children. Okay. You're now living with them 24/7. They're awesome creatures. They are loving, caring, adorable things. You want to foster that. You want to know what's going on with their lives, right? You want to know about their disappointments. Maybe there's a way that you can say, okay, I know we missed graduation, but when this whole thing is over, let's throw a party at our house, a barbecue, and we'll invite all of your friends. I know it won't be the same, but maybe we can do something like that. Scheduling Zoom calls with all of your friends to spend those times together. I get it. It's not the same thing, but there's something there that can be done. I would argue that the biggest thing that kids feel like right now is the lack of control, right?
Yeah.
And so
we all do.
Right, we all do, for sure. Let's give them some of that control by giving them choices that are appropriate that they can then make and follow, right? So if you missed the prom, I get it. It's not too much fun to dress up in your dress and dance with your dad. I get it.
Especially when you put it that way, yeah.
Right. But at the end of the day, there are some really touching new traditions that can come from this. Yeah. There are some really important emotional times that can foster from this. I've even heard of some people who were saying, well, I got it bad because I don't have prom, but my buddy's mom is a nurse and they haven't seen him in, a month, so perspective, I think, is also something that's important for kids, because look, my teenagers, like when I turn to them, I'm like, what do you think about COVID? My son's like, it's annoying. Like, that's his answer. COVID is annoying. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, it's killing people. And to him, it's annoying, right? Because teenagers are so self-centered.
They
right?
have one viewpoint.
That's it, and if it's not in their acute visual field, they don't even see it, right? I mean, literally, if I turn to my son and I say, turn your head to the left, and that's where it is in the pantry, he'll, oh, there it is. Like, I mean, it's unbelievable. Yeah. So their myopia, right? Their ability to only focus on themselves, it can be an advantage or it can be a disadvantage during this time. So focus on them, right? Figure out what's bothering them. Yes, we're all having times where it's not too convenient. They're missing some of the most important times of their lives.
I feel,
Right.
Absolutely.
So let's honor that and let's see if we can help with that.
So kind of lean in with it, acknowledge it, and then figure out what is in our control. What can we look forward to? What can we plan ahead to? And what can we do right now?
Yeah. And involve your children in that process.
Yes. Great point.
Don't tell them, hey, I'm going to throw you a party. They may not want a party. They might want to go for a hike, right? Ask them their opinions. What would they like to do, and involve them in that process. I
think that's a great point. Yep. But walk us through your personal sleep routine.
So I never go to bed before midnight. It's just how I am. I'm a night owl. I go to bed at midnight. I wake up at 6:13, between 6:13 and 6:22 every day.
This is what happens when you keep the same schedule.
Exactly. My schedule, I used to sleep a lot longer. I used to sleep almost 7.5 hours. I sleep about 6 hours and 15 minutes purely based on the consistency of that schedule. It literally shrinks my sleep down. When we look at my sleep, it's actually much better.
Because you probably fall into you have a very rich,
done,
refreshing sleep. Your body's like, I've got this.
Yeah. The other thing I do is I don't believe that sleep is an on-off switch. I give myself a little bit of runway. So I don't wait until I'm so exhausted to try to fall asleep. I have a routine. So I take, 10 or 15 minutes to do things that just have to get done before the next day. So before it was getting the kids' backpacks together, finding sports equipment, stuff like that. 15 minutes for hygiene, and then 15 minutes for some form of meditation, relaxation, prayer, whatever it does to begin the process of lowering that heart rate and to begin the process of getting me there. I use different things at different times. Sometimes I'll watch television with my wife, and that's one of the ways that I relax. Sometimes I might be listening to music or a podcast. Sometimes I might be reading. Sometimes I might just be thinking, like just reflecting and allowing myself the opportunity to kind of think through what happened during my day. But whatever it is, just slowly get yourself there. The time before bed is not the time to have a big revelation. It's not the time to, be pouring through data. It's really the time to give your body the opportunity to heal, because that's really what sleeping is.
I think that's good. And if you find yourself needing that time for the revelations, try to schedule that some other time during the day, so you're not doing it at night.
Yeah. And to be clear, the worry journal should be done right after dinner, not before bed.
Ooh, Ooh, clear it out. So you clear it
Yep.
out. It's not thinking about it right before it. That's a really good point. Okay, last question. I ask this because as an ER doctor, people find out that we talked about cocktail party conversation. People find out that you're an ER doctor and they always get the, what's the weirdest, craziest thing you've ever seen? So I'm throwing that to you, Michael. What's the weirdest or craziest thing you've ever seen someone try to help them sleep?
I'm glad you prepped me for this question a little bit because I've been thinking about it during the interview. So I do have a funny story. That was really, I have two of them that are pretty interesting. So one of them, so as you may or may not know, I'm a big pet lover. We have several animals here in our home. I have a Chihuahua, a French Bulldog, and a cat.
Yes.
All of them sleep in our bed. Yes.
You break your own rules, sir.
No, I don't. No, I don't, because I don't have a rule against animals in the bed, as long as the animals are not disruptive, right? And so we actually have areas where I've trained the animals to stay, and so they're not disruptive, right? And so, and a lot of people, believe it or not, if you remove the animal from the bed, they sleep worse, not better. It's pretty interesting. They become very accustomed to it. So anyway, I'm in a PetSmart, and I used to, when I was growing up, we had Great Danes. So there's a very, very large
Which
dog.
probably should not share the bed with you. That would be another challenge.
Here comes the story.
Okay.
So I turn the corner and there's this beautiful Great Dane in PetSmart. So I walk over and I'm petting on him, and we strike up a conversation. You know, what do you do? What do you do? Oh, I'm a sleep doctor. And the guy's like, you know, I've been meaning to talk to somebody. I have terrible, terrible sleep. Tell me more. He's like, you know, I just can't get comfortable. I can't do this. Then his wife comes over. And by the way, this is not a small individual. He's about 6'4". He's about 260 pounds. He's a big guy. His wife comes over. She's about 5'10". She's about 180 pounds, not a small woman, with another Great Dane.
I feel like I see where this is going. Yes.
Right, you know where the story is going. And so I'm talking, I'm interviewing them, I'm trying to figure out, like, why can't you get comfortable? They have a queen size bed, 2 Great Danes in the bed with his wife and himself.
And they're wondering why they can't sleep.
And they don't know why they can't sleep. And it was one of those moments where, you know, you don't want to make people feel dumb for asking the question.
And I'm not trying to laugh at them. I'm laughing more.
No, I was laughing
all
at
do
them.
These things.
I was laughing right at them, to be fair. So my son is standing there with me, and before I can say a word, he's like, I think it's the dogs, dude.
From the mouth of babes.
Exactly.
Well, Michael, thank you. Tell everybody where they can find you and your wonderful books and everything you're doing.
Of course. Thank you for asking. So I'm super easy to find. It's The Sleep Doctor, doctors all spelled out, .com. I'm there. I'm on social. I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. And it's all The Sleep Doctor. So you can't forget that part. I also have some very specific recommendations for COVID in particular. So there's a website. It's thesleepdoctor.com/sleep-pandemic. And so we can put that up for people if they're looking for specific COVID sleep recommendations, and then some stress reduction techniques as well.
Love it. Michael, thank you so much. I am going to try to get up at the same time every day starting tomorrow. I'm really going to do it. I will complain for the next 21 days. You will hear from me.
I'm sure you will be texting me and being like, really, Michael? Are you kidding me?
But then 22 days out, it'll be like, waking up. So thank you so much for your time. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Thanks. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Sweet dreams.
Thank you.